So a word that's come up a lot in conservative circles has been lawfare. So this is the idea that legal cases being used as a way of undermining one's political opponents. So there's all these law cases against Trump, but Alex Jones got taken to court by the Sandy Hook residents for things he said about them. And it just doesn't make sense to me. How is it that anyone can get fined £800 million? It's actually more what they tried for. And it just seems like you're trying to put somebody out of business, basically. You're trying to neutralise them. And same thing with Donald Trump. So, yeah, I'm just going to play some of those videos and then try and sum up a bit at the end. Okay, thanks.
Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson.
Coverage like this has cost Fox dearly.
The real point is that fraud took place.
These polls weren't scientific.
Dominion machines helped count the votes in the 2020 presidential election. But as the result became clear, Fox broadcast false allegations that Dominion was involved in a plot to steal the election from Donald Trump.
Switch votes, foreign or Democratic Party influence, secret tampering.
The company sued for defamation, but to avoid trial, Fox is paying up.
Today's settlement of $787,500,000 represents vindication and accountability. Lies have consequences.
In February, a stunning trove of internal communications revealed that Fox chair Rupert Murdoch and Fox hosts privately acknowledged the vote rigging claims were false, but allowed them to be aired anyway. Today's settlement spares the network the embarrassment of having some of its best-known figures called to the witness stand. In a statement, Fox Corp acknowledged the court's rulings, finding certain claims about Dominion to be false, but it did not apologise. The legal battles aren't over for Fox regarding lies about the 2020 election. Election technology company Smartmatic has launched a lawsuit similar to Dominion's, but it's asking for an even bigger figure, more than $4 billion. Even for a company as big as Fox, today's payout will hurt, but the damage to its reputation could prove even more costly. Carrington Clark, ABC News, Wilmington, Delaware.
So we can see in the video that Carlson is saying, fraud took place, and the Fox presenters saying, these polls weren't scientific, that sort of thing. And that Fox settled to avoid having their main presenters kind of put on the stand. I mean, people often say, "Oh, I don't believe this." I think what happens is you end up with, somebody says something like that, and they're just saying it in a kind of quite a colloquial sort of way. I don't believe this or whatever, and then it gets taken like literally and legalistically. And probably what happened was that Rupert Murdoch had a kind of private conversation with Tucker. This is me speculating, and he said, "Well, yeah, I know you probably believe that, but you can't really say it, and so that was the evidence that they used to say that Fox executives knew that it was false. I mean, they didn't apologise, it says in the video, and probably that's the reason why, because they probably still believe on some level that it's the case, that there was some sort of, maybe not the Dominion voting machines company, but just generally speaking, something unfair went on. I mean, what happened in the end was that Tucker Carlson ended up leaving Fox, and then he's gone over to X, where he's got a much bigger audience, actually.
Team Trump reached out to us, recognizing that X can deliver a far larger audience than traditional cable news. Tucker Carlson, our distinguished host and former Fox News personality, will conduct this exclusive interview, airing tonight at 8:55.
So he was the most prominent cable news presenter in America, and I think the number of people that he now reaches is absolutely massive. So what about this £787 million damages to Dominion? So I'm just looking at a Reuters article, and it says that, and I quote, Fox had claimed the figure was impossible to square with its own assessment that Dominion was doing fine as a business and continued to post strong revenues. And it talks about fanciful growth projections. So private equity firm Staple Street Capital valued Dominion at $80 million when it purchased a controlling stake in it in 2018. So, and it says that investors in Dominion are looking at a kind of 20-fold return on their investment due to these court cases. So Dominion are not just taking Fox to court, they're taking a whole load of other people to court as well. Damages disputes are expected in 6 other defamation lawsuits Dominion are pursuing, seeking combined $8.7 billion in damages, also over the election rigging falsehood. Cases against right-wing media outlets One American News Network and Newsmax, as well as Overstock.com founder Patrick Byrne, asked for the same $1.6 billion that Dominion has sought from Fox. Cases against former Trump attorneys Rudy Giuliani and Sidney Powell and conservative businessman Mike Lindell seek $1.3 billion apiece. So you've got a company that was quoted 6 years ago as being worth $80 million. It's doing all right, and it's claiming that the damage to its business from these claims about falsehood from all those right-wing news outlets is damaging it to the point of $8.7 billion. So what's that, 8.7 billion times 80? That's 80 million, 800 million. That's 100 times what it was valued at. The whole thing about Lawfare, everything ends up in hands of lawyers, and in a clip coming up from Alex Jones, he talks about something to do with the Dominion case, and that the judge made a decision that Fox was guilty or had defamed Dominion, and then he just kind of gave that to the jury. So the jury didn't see all the evidence. These jurors just were given this thing. So, well, this information, and they just came up with this figure. Maybe a bit of an emotional response, you know. Oh, well, let's show them, you know. So I think this let's show them approach to justice, it does smack of politics, really. Like I said, January 6th, there were, I think, 4 people died. 3 of them Trump supporters. One was shot by a policeman. One was crushed in a kind of melee, and one had a heart attack. And then the Capitol police officer, Brian Sicknick, who died the next day, he was pepper sprayed a couple of times. In fact, this protester, Julian Catter, he sprayed 3 officers with pepper spray. And then he said to his brother that he felt all right, you know, that evening. He went home, and then he died the next day of a blood clot on his brain. So he basically had a stroke. But the media just went to town and promoted this story about him being hit over the head with a fire extinguisher, which there was absolutely no evidence for. But it went viral, that story, and it was all in the media about he was murdered. Well, what happened was he was pepper sprayed a couple of times, you know. And so Julian Catter has been sentenced to 80 months in jail. He's already been in jail since April 2021. He's been in jail 3 years already for pepper spraying somebody, for a police officer. And at the same time, you know, if you look back at the BLM riots, a similar case where somebody was, pepper sprayed a number of officers, a kind of left-wing activist, he ended up getting let off. So Conservatives talk about a double standard here of justice, really. Yeah, so that was Fox News. So another case is the case of Alex Jones. So Alex Jones was fined something like $800 million for remarks he made in relation to the Sandy Hook case.
A jury in the US state of Connecticut has ordered the conspiracy theorist Alex Jones to pay damages of almost $1 billion after he falsely claimed that a school shooting in 2012 was a hoax. He was sued by the families of 8 of the victims of the Sandy Hook school shooting in 2012, in which 20 children and 6 teachers lost their lives. Our North America correspondent Peter Bowes reports.
An emotional response from the families to this colossal award of damages. They took Alex Jones to court after he claimed for years that the shooting at Sandy Hook School was a staged government plot to take guns from Americans and that no one had died. The right-wing radio host called the parents of the victims crisis actors, but he now acknowledges that the attack was real. The jurors decided he must pay millions in damages for promoting the lie that the shooting was a hoax. The families told the court they'd suffered years of harassment, including death threats. Robbie Parker's 6-year-old daughter, Emily, was killed in the attack.
Our lawyers helped give me the strength to finally find my voice and to fight and to stand up to what had been happening to me for so long, and for how I let my voice be taken away from me and my power be taken away from me.
As the jury's decision was being announced, Alex Jones called the verdict delusional and mocked the outcome of the case. Outside the court, his lawyer told reporters they would be appealing.
My heart goes out to the families. We live in divided times. They've been weaponized and used for political purposes in this country, in my view, and today is a very, very, very dark day for freedom of speech.
It seems unlikely the families will receive much, if any, of the damages ordered by the jury. Alex Jones and his company have filed for bankruptcy in Texas, and he still faces a 3rd defamation trial. Peter Bowes, BBC News.
So it's obviously a big question. You know, did Alex Jones actually say that it was a hoax, the Sandy Hook massacre, and it was staged, or did he not? One of the things that I see in Alex Jones is like a firebrand, really. He gets enthusiastic and he doesn't always know what he's doing. A lot of what he's pointed out has actually been, even though it's often just labelled, this is slightly ridiculous to label anybody a conspiracy theorist, because that's an ad hominem argument. Everything that somebody says needs to be open to scrutiny, not ridiculed before they've actually said what it is they want to say. But it's obviously a big question. What did he say? So I've got a clip now from X, which used to be Twitter, and Elon Musk bought the company and set up a thing called Spaces. So on Spaces, there's been debates between Elon Musk, Andrew Tate, Vivek Ramaswamy, a whole load of different people in the same discussion room. And it's not video, it's just audio, but I think it's a great idea. Anyway, so having asked him back onto X, Musk, one of the first things he said is, "What happened?" So here's the clip. Thanks.
And Alex, I honestly don't really know you, and you don't know me, but one of the questions I really have to just get out of the way, and you've probably talked about this already before, is the whole Sandy Hook thing. If somebody's sort of denying or that murders of children, that's not cool at all. And so just what exactly did you say, and what is going on with that situation? I would like to actually hear what did you say, and yeah.
Well, Elon, thank you for allowing me back into the public square so that I can actually tell the world what really happened. Let me tell you what happened. I'm a guy that didn't go to college. A few years of community college. I started out on Access TV 29 years ago. I was not professionally trained. And by 2000, I had 30 million viewers and listeners a day conservatively. I was the biggest show, as big as Rogan is now or bigger. And I had a very small operation and did not even understand how powerful I was. And so when that event, I just call it the school shooting, which I do believe happened 11 years ago, the internet exploded, and it was a top story for off and on for years with all these professors and former school safety people and all of them saying they believed it was a drill. And I simply covered them covering that. And then years later, after Trump got elected and after I was deplatformed, it made me bigger. And so suddenly I would wake up and there would be sometimes 100 articles or more a day every major news channel saying that I was currently saying nobody died, currently sending people to their houses, currently peeing on graves. I didn't even know these people's names. I only said one of their names ever. Now, and I believe their children died, and I understand all that.
Okay.
But I'm saying, imagine I was not deplatformed, no mention of the school shooting in Connecticut, like 6-7 years. Then they go back to my timeline, and it turns out it was a big New York PR firm, Democratic Party. They dredge it up. They run hundreds of articles, sometimes a day, but a week for over a year. Suddenly it becomes a big story again.
What's the PR
Then
firm?
people, pardon me?
Which propaganda firm was this? PR is public relations is a propaganda word for propaganda. So I think we should call those propaganda firms, because that is in fact what they do. So what propaganda firm was this?
I will find the name as soon as I'm off, because I can't do 2 days. I'm not good at doing 2 days at once. I can't walk and chew bubblegum, but I will post it to the 2X, because after they got their $1.5 billion judgment and asked for 2.67 trillion, that the GDP of India, I'm not joking, folks, that's Bloomberg. They then came out and bragged that they had quarterbacked the whole thing. They're one of the biggest. They do the UN's PR.
Okay.
Not that they had quarterbacked, quote, destroying Alex Jones. And so I did question it. I did say at times I could see that. I'm not even say it now. They'll take it out of context. Say I said it again. I did have what they entered in court on me was 23 minutes of video and audio over 5-6 years. We did an audit. I hadn't talked about them when they sued me for 2 years. I refused to talk about it. I apologized when the PR firm got involved, and I didn't know who it was at the time. It was just all over the news. I said, hey, I thought it happened.
Yeah.
I said it happened. I said it happened. I decided it happened 5 years after it happened. So I said, I'm not the Sandy Hook guy. It turns out some of these experts that said it didn't happen are crazy. They made up stuff. I said, I believe it happened. And then they spun it and said, oh, now he admits he lied about it. So it isn't who I was. It's kind of like they've done with you, and you did nothing like I did. I mean, I did question it. I did say a few times that I thought it hadn't happened, but I didn't turn the knife. I didn't really think about it. I thought about how I was talking about the internet with YouTube videos with 30, 40 million views that I didn't make.
Sure.
It was a hot topic that would come back from time to time. But no, I was not the creator of it. I was not the progenitor of it. I was not the guy pushing it. And then I kept saying, no, I believe it happened. And they went, aha, you now admit you lied for money. So what's not true is I never made any money off of it. I barely ever covered it. It's not my identity. And it's just like they misrepresent what you say, take one little thing and twist it, and then say you need to apologize for it. And then they just keep hammering it and hammering it. So I've been desperately, I mean, in fact, I'll post it to X if you want. There's over 100 apologies that I've given, over 100. In fact, probably 500. Every show I go on, they ask this. I apologized on Joe Rogan's show 5 years ago. I apologized on Patrick Ben-David's show 5 years ago. I mean, these are prominent ones. I apologize on every show, and I'll say it again. I apologize that I just gave my commentary, because I'm really just a guy that talk radio host. So I do that on the internet. I just take calls, interview guests, and that I played devil's advocate. And if that hurt people's feelings, I apologize. But I did not send people to your houses. I did not pee on graves. I don't know any of the stuff that went on. And then when they had the trials, after I was found guilty, trials on damages, there was never any video of people peeing on graves, any video of people at houses. There was an FBI agent who was there that day at the tragic event in New Haven, Connecticut, with Sandy, I can say the name. He was there, and he didn't have an FBI vest on, and his gun was pointed the wrong direction, pointed upside down. The internet questioned him. When he got on the stand in Connecticut, my lawyer said, has Mr. Jones ever said your name? No. Has Mr. Jones ever put your picture on the internet? No. Have any of his hosts done it? No. Has InfoWars ever put your picture out or said your name? No. What happened to you, sir? One man, he said, called 8 years ago now and asked me if I was really an FBI agent. The jury gave him $94 million that doesn't exist. $94 million that never said his name. So I challenge people to find me say any of their names. I said one guy's name, and I apologized to him on the stand.
That I never intentionally tried to hurt you. I never even said your name until this case came to court. I didn't even really know who you were until a couple of years ago when all this started up. The internet had a lot of questions. I had questions. And over that 6-7 year period before I got sued, or 6-year period, it's clear. You can see the whole progression of us, the few times we covered it, trying to actually find out what happened. And that's really been my big frustration, is that people have said that I'm personally trying to hurt them or coming after them when I question every big event, and a lot of times it turns out that we've not been told the truth. And a perfect example is today where they play a 30 or a 1 minute clip, and I had just done that this morning, and I knew that I said, I believe that Scarlett Lewis is real, and she's a really nice person, and she's really a sweet person. And then I went through and talked about her ex-husband too, and then I said I believe they're being fed and manipulated. And this is a perfect.
Sustained.
This is a perfect.
Sustained. When you hear sustained, you have to stop talking.
Okay.
Do you feel that the video clip was a fair representation of what you meant to convey?
No, it had the front and back. No.
Okay, and why wasn't it fair?
Because it had the front and back cut off of it to totally misrepresent the apology at the end and at the first where I said, I believe she's a real person and lost her child. So someone edited that and then showed it to her, and then they brought it in here and played it to show it to you. And I think you should ask to see the full segment.
The thing had probably 100 million views on 5 or 6 different YouTube videos of him smiling and laughing before he walked to the mic. I played the clip one time and said, yeah, that looks like he's an actor. I did not attack him, did not come after him, did not say his child didn't die. Look, I don't want to fight with him, though. I said to them in a deposition, I said, I will chop my pinky finger off with a meat cleaver right now. And I will. If you'll just leave me alone and stop saying I made hundreds of millions of dollars off of you and stop saying I'm attacking you. So it's very simple. I have become, and I know what happened. The media ran a year of articles attacking them in my name, saying things I never said as a straw man, enraging them against me. And then, so they've been victimized, they've been manipulated by a PR operation. And so I would love to come on X with the families. I'd love to raise money on this show or your show, Elon, or any of them. I'd love to come on here and raise them $10 million for gun safety awareness next week. I would love to be in an open panel with them. I would love.
Okay.
Yeah, and then so what happened? This massive fine. It's ridiculous. Sandy Hook people were going for $2.7 trillion. It seems like he did say the FBI guy was an actor maybe once, and he did play devil's advocate. And as he said, he was reporting what other people had said and probably just a bit over-enthusiastic about an idea. And it seems a bit stupid in retrospect. But it seems like he's apologised multiple times, but still the media are kind of coming for him, really. And this is because of his political views and the fact that he regularly is revealing things that the establishment don't really want to be revealed. So this is what it's all about, I think. So here's Patrick Bet-David interviewing him and talking about this massive fine.
What I want to talk to you about is they came out, if you can pull up this article, with a fine of, this is Sandy Hook families want Alex Jones to pay up $2.75 trillion in damages as he seeks new trial. So here's a question I got for you. Either you're the richest man in the world and we don't know that. How do they collect that kind of money? How do they come up with a number like this to collect from you?
And then they run articles in the New York Times saying Jones refuses to pay. How am I? That's the GDP of like Scotland, France.
Actually, India's GDP is exactly $3 trillion. So they want you to pay India's GDP,
which is 1,500,000,000 people.
Yeah.
What they do is they, in certain jurisdictions like Austin and areas of Connecticut and D.C., they go in, and this was in the case with or Delaware with Fox, and the judge defaults you. The judge defaults you and says to the jury, you're guilty. Well, the judge didn't call the default in Dominion with Fox. The judge said, I'm saying you're guilty and you did lie about the election, and I'm going to tell the jury that, and we're going to start it from that point. So she did like a soft default with them. That's when they went, whoa, we settled. Well, with me, they did a hard default, said I gave them no information. No, I gave them 4 years of stuff, gave them everything they wanted, and then they had no case because I never made up any of the stuff that they said that I said, and I couldn't put a defense on. The jury's only heard, I'm guilty, now decide how much. Then they put financial experts on that never examined our books, didn't want to look at our books, and said I was worth $400 million. And so they look back over the fact that we'd made, I mean, probably like $600-700 million in the last 10, 12 years. And they just said, look, He kept 400 million. And then the juries went, well, fine then, maybe give him $1 billion. And then they went back to the judge and said 1.5 billion in Connecticut's not enough. They said, and that's why it's in Bloomberg. This is not a joke, folks. They said, well, no, we want 2.75 trillion.
How did they come up with that number, though?
They gave an FBI agent who I'd never heard his name, never talked about him. They had none of me on air, none of my crew, no articles. He's listed in the lawsuit from Connecticut. First time I ever read his name, and he got 90+ million from me. And the law says in Connecticut and Texas, you can't sue somebody if they didn't say your name. The judges waived it and said, we don't care. And he said on the stand, he got one phone call at his office to make sure he was really an FBI agent. And he said, and that was because of me. I didn't even know who the guy was that called. Then the guy that called his office showed up at the court, and I found his videos on YouTube, just a polite guy calling up saying, hey, people say this didn't happen. I'm just calling to check you're really FBI agent. And the jury said, $90-something million, you got one phone call.
Jeez.
I want to get one of these phone calls if I get $90 million for it.
Alex, these numbers seem outrageous, whether it's $500 million, $1 billion, $1 trillion.
And by the way, the media will say I'm denying it. 4 years ago on your show, I said I thought it happened. I said it 7 years ago, I thought it happened.
But here's my question.
The media just went and took a few things out of context and blew it up. But I wasn't doing it as a business. It was a business to make money to get the word out. And it's fine to make money, but my real motive was always to expose the globalists, not have World War III, have sovereignty, have a good country for my children and a good world to grow up in. And I was exposing interesting, crazy things that I knew about and having fun while I was doing it.
No, but that doesn't really answer the question, because I understand your motivation to make the money. How do you repay the money, the quote unquote $1 billion?
Oh, yeah. Well, how
does that work?
Sure. I mean, that's a prima facie answer. Obviously, I don't.
Okay.
I mean, I just said, I mean, the court has said I can be paid if I want to stay at Free Speech Systems and let it keep going, $1.5 million a year right now. Well, my legal bills are over $1.5 million a year. It's
crazy.
So I basically work for free now. I have my house, it's homesteaded. And that's basically, and so I've run out of money, and that's a big question. And they've now admitted, the lawyers in both cases in Texas and Connecticut said on the courthouse steps, our goal is not to get this money. Our goal is to silence it.
Why do you constantly find yourself getting in trouble? What is it about Alex Jones? Some will say, well, they're afraid of what Alex has to say because Alex is exposing them. Did you see what Alex did? Alex talked about 9/11 in July, and it happened 4 months later. How did he know, that this was going to happen 2 months later? How did he know when he talked about it in the video? How did he know about this, and how did he know about that? Some of the stories with the Skull and Bone Society you've talked about, the big pharma on the government, the cashless society, the government surveillance, Epstein, high profile. You've talked about all that stuff, and then some of the stuff with vaccine got you in trouble with, Sandy Hook, with the pizza, with all these other things. But why do you think they are trying to do this to you? 2.75 trillion. When even a regular person hears it, they're like, "This is ludicrous, ridiculous type of numbers." What do they fear the most with you?
Well, I've made mistakes and I've gotten some things wrong, and I never did it on purpose. And then what they do is, it's like having a magnifying glass or a microscope at a grain of sand. It looks like a mountain when you look at it. So they blow up these things on my timeline, and what they did is that we now know what happened. They tried to censor us and block us and stuff over the years because we broke a lot of big stories, did a lot of great research, had a lot of great guests on, and broke a lot of original important news, and our accuracy was way above 95%. And then Trump comes along, and when we went to the RNC in Cleveland, and about a third of the people that showed up in the streets, I'd say about 50, 60,000 in the streets, that's outside the convention, we're all wearing InfoWars shirts and Alex Jones shirts, because we'd had a lot of shirts going out. We'd sold like 300, 400, 500,000 of just one shirt about Hillary for president, but we sold it at cost for $5. And so there was, I'd say 10,000 Hillary for president shirts there. And there were thousands inside. And so you've got all these reporters there. There's no counter demonstrators.
Pull up those shirts, Rob, so we can see what it looks like. Oh, keep going.
And so all there was, and of course the news reported on this. They're like, there's a sea of InfoWars shirts and a sea of Hillary for president shirts. And then when Trump won, they'd already started the Russiagate investigation saying everybody was a Russian agent. So now we know it's been declassified that they said I was a Russian agent, Trump was a Russian agent. It was all fake. And then they were able to declare national security. This came out in Congress 3 months ago, and put the CIA on us. So the CIA, through law firms and through PR firms, they've now bragged after the cases about this. They had a big Time magazine article about it, and they had and then the PR firm's one of the largest in the country. Just got bought by the biggest. They do the PR for the UN. After the judgments, they went, okay, we did it. We're the geniuses. We're the best. We went and found something that made him look bad, blew it up, had the media all report it, and then make it hurtful to people, but it was them blowing it up. Then demonize me, say that I was Trump's right-hand man to demonize Trump, and then basically set the precedent that if they could take me down, they could then take everybody else down. That if folks allowed me to be taken down, they also mentioned Julian Assange in the documents, if they could shut him down and have the left agree with it and have the right agree with me being shut down, it would set the precedent to knock down all the dominoes. So I was chosen just as the archetype of, see, it's good, we're going to censor him. And then as soon as they were done with me, they moved on to everybody else. And so I was just chosen as the test pilot for this.
So that's Alex Jones. So the third example is Donald Trump. Again, another massive fine, hundreds of millions of pounds for what's effectively a business misdemeanor. There it is.
Good afternoon. We're coming on the air with major developments involving Donald Trump. This involves New York State's civil fraud trial against Donald Trump and a massive blow to Trump and his sons, Don Jr. and Eric Trump. Judge Arthur Engoron has just released his ruling on damages against both the former president and his sons for the exaggeration of the values of their real estate holdings in order to receive benefits for loans and insurance purposes, according to New York's Attorney General. I want to bring in John Santucci, has covered the Trump family for years. And John, first look here at the damages here. When it comes to Donald Trump, we know Letitia James had asked for $370 million in damages. So what did the judge rule?
So far, David, our team's quickly done some math. It appears the former president is on the hook for $354 million, obviously below what Letitia James was seeking after these months of proceedings that happened in downtown Manhattan, but nevertheless, a significant amount of money. David, as our team is pouring through this ruling from the judge, it also appears that Donald Trump's two eldest sons, Donald Trump Jr. and Eric Trump, who were running the company while their father was in the White House, both boys, David, on the hook for $4 million apiece. Now, the other part of this ruling from the judge, 92 pages that our team is pouring over at the moment, it says that Donald Trump cannot do any business related to real estate in New York for 3 years, and each of the boys, each 2 years apart, can also not do business in New York. David, in talking to sources around Donald Trump for the last couple of days, there was a little bit of optimism among the Trump family that maybe the boys would not be built into this ruling with Dad because of some of the comments that the judge had made over the weeks-long proceedings, that maybe the boys would be held out of it. That could be a way to keep the company going, if you will. Just basically take everything that was under Donald Trump and slide it to his children. But this ruling, David, makes that impossible. It means that Donald Trump and the boys cannot do business in New York. And I can tell you, David, that one of the things that was being considered amongst Trump Tower is if that was to happen, what would happen to all of the employees of the Trump organization? That has been a big concern, David.
So how did the New York business community respond to the judgment on Trump? So here's Kevin O'Leary saying that these are the practices that every businessman does. So what's the difference, really? So, okay, thanks.
Well, the multi-million-dollar question tonight, will Donald Trump be barred from New York's luxury real estate business and forced to pay perhaps $370 million for falsifying financial records? Here to break it all down and what's at stake, Shark Tank judge and chairman of O'Leary Ventures. Some call him Mr. Wonderful. We'll call him Kevin O'Leary tonight. Kevin, thank you for being here today. I have to ask you, I mean, look, some people look at all this and they say, is this what happens in business, what Trump has said he's done or is accused of being done? You've been doing real estate for decades. Does this case strike you as odd?
Well, let's leave out Trump for a minute and let's leave out politics and just talk about what happens in real estate development anywhere. So if you're a developer and you've got a building on a block anywhere in America and it's worth, let's say, $500 million and you want to build a building right beside it, you go to the bank and say, this building is worth $500 million. I'd like to borrow a construction finance loan against this asset. and I want you to tell me it's worth $500 million too. And the bank negotiates with you and says, well, no, we think it's worth $400 million. And you fight it out. You're always trying to show your assets in the brightest light with the sunshine you can possibly determine for them. You want them to be worth the very most, because you're only going to get a 40 or 50% loan to value, as it's called. Then you borrow that money. In the case of a $500 million asset, maybe you get $250 million, and you build a new building with a construction finance loan. And so that's what this case is all about. And by the way, forget about Trump. Every single real estate developer everywhere on earth does this. They always talk about their asset being worth a lot, and the bank says no. And that's just the way it is. So in this case, when I'm trying to figure out, and I'm not pro or con, or I don't care about the politics, who lost money? Nobody. The bank got paid back the construction finance loan, and a new building was built. And if you're going to sue this case and win, you got to sue every real estate developer everywhere. This is all they do. This is what they do all day long, every day. So I don't think this thing will ever survive appeal, regardless of what the fine is. This doesn't even make sense. Now, look, I know Trump's got a lot of problems in other indictments and everything else, but this, if you're a real estate developer, you're watching this, you're saying, what is this? This is ridiculous. You don't want to be Donald Trump and get embroiled in what looks like, I mean, it looks to me in this presidential race, and I'm not in favor of this, that the courts are being used to try and sway voters on both sides of the equation. I don't understand why we're trying to, impeach Biden. What a waste of time. And his son and all this stuff, and all of this litigation on Trump hasn't moved the needle for either of these candidates. People don't care about this noise anymore, and it's obvious when you look at these poll results. And so why keep doing it? I mean, let the voters vote and decide on the merits of both. I'd rather hear policy. I'd rather not hear about Trump's real estate woes in New York. I'd like to hear his tax plan. I want to hear about security at the border. I'd like to hear foreign policy from both of these candidates so I can make a decision as a voter on which of these people should be president. And the rest of this stuff is just horrific noise. When in America do we sue sitting presidents and former presidents? We've never done this before. This is really bad for the American brand. This is it feels like Venezuela to me or something. This is nuts. We're so close to the election. We're months away. Let's talk policy. Give me some meat on the bone. This stuff's getting too crazy.
One case that we'll see if they do anything before Election Day that could be one of the last impacts of the lawfare against Trump on Election Day is the skepticism that even the Democratic New York Court of Appeals expressed at oral argument concerning the insane monetary judgment against Donald Trump.
So the oral arguments before the Court of Appeal, the Appeals Court of New York, the panel, I don't know who the judges were, but I think even one of them who was asking these questions was a Democrat appointee. I don't remember if it was.
I think they're all Democratic appointees, to my knowledge.
And so I forget the guy's name. I'll find it in a second. But was asking basically what was Trump's defense is like, didn't you go a little bit scope creep on this law, which is like expand it beyond what its intention was in terms of going after two sophisticated entities? This is what the judge said, which is what Engoron treated the banks like they were little babes in the woods. And I must have said that 50 times at the time to say, oh, they were duped into loaning money to Trump as if they didn't do their own due diligence, as if they didn't ask for their own financial documents. And so the judge, whichever one it was, and I'll get his name, says, these are sophisticated actors. Nobody complained. Nobody lost anything. And don't you think you're not overreacting, but rather over expanding the scope of this law, which was intended to right wrongs when there was a complainant? And the response was in my view, wholly unsatisfactory response, which was, well, there wasn't anybody who was a victim in this case, but that doesn't mean that this is a victimless crime because others might so exploit this and do what Trump did, and there will be real victims in the future.
You hear underneath all these questions, the question of mission creep. Has 6312 morphed into something that it was not meant to do?
The Democratic Party's Lawfare strategy to defeat Donald Trump took another blow at the end of September, not that the media gave it much attention. 3 prosecutions have already hit snags, and now a New York appellate court has expressed considerable doubt about Attorney General Letitia James's $489 million fraud prosecution and verdict.
May it please the court, Judith Vale for the New York Attorney General's office.
A 5-judge appellate panel heard Mr. Trump's appeal of a lower court judge's penalty for allegedly inflating the value of his real estate assets to obtain better loan terms. But before the Deputy Solicitor General from the AG's office had even started, Justice Friedman jumped in with this, a question that judges repeatedly came back to.
All of the defendants repeatedly violated...
Ms. Vale, can you identify any previous case in which the Attorney General sued under Executive Law 6312 to upset a private business transaction that was between equally sophisticated partners?
What made Attorney General Letitia James's lawsuit so unusual when it went to court was that nobody claimed to have been harmed by the former president's alleged legerdemain. That's ordinarily required in fraud cases.
And it was using...
Sorry, but what's being described sounds an awful lot like a potential commercial dispute between private actors.
Prior cases brought under the state civil fraud law involved corporate actions with large numbers of assumed victims, such as banks withholding money from customers. But this was different, said Justice Friedman.
I mean, you've got 2 really sophisticated parties in which no one lost any money. Every case that you cite involved where there was damage to consumers, damage to the marketplace. You've got a scheme to get unsophisticated consumers to take out home loans. You got a collapse of Lehman Brothers. You don't have anything like that here.
And that's something you must address, because there has to be some limitation on what the Attorney General can do in interfering in these private transactions, as Justice Friedman said, that where people don't claim harm. So what is the limiting principle?
Justice Moulton also questioned the staggering $489 million penalty.
The immense penalty in this case is troubling. So how do you tether the amount that was assessed by Supreme Court to the harm that was caused here, where the parties left these transactions happy about how things went down?
They were grilling the prosecutor of this in a way that anybody with half a brain understood they should. What do you think they're ultimately going to do?
I think that 75-80% chance that they throw it out. I am a betting man, so those would be the odds I would set. There's probably going to be a market up somewhere for it, Polymarket, Kalshi, someplace else. But once they were brought, they were political theater, and they would be show trials, but that they would walk back from the edge of actually enforcing any of them before Election Day. And so far, that's exactly what we've seen in all the cases. And I think that's what we're going to see here, because the problem was always beyond Trump. For political theater against Trump, fine, use it for Election Day. But the New York Court of Appeals will deliberately probably delay their ruling until after Election Day. An honest court would know how to answer this. But they're ultimately going to step back from the breach. And it's because they don't want to give the Attorney General the power to target anybody anywhere, or New York is going to massively lose investors. And that's already been threatened by high-profile investors who said, we're getting the hell out of New York if you go forward with if this case is not reversed. There's no way we're going to trust ourselves to the whim of a random state prosecutor who can broadcast in advance their political motivation and bankrupt me, even without there being any victim. It's an unheard of case, unprecedented case. I mean, everything about Trump's cases are unprecedented, unparalleled. And what we said at the time, even these judges were recognizing, how do we issue a $400 million fine without a victim? How is that within your power again?
With sophisticated players, it's not someone duping a grandma out of her life savings. The accusation was, are they not expanding this to upset a private business transaction that was between equally sophisticated partners? And then the answer was, there was another question where it says, I think you hear underneath all these questions the question of mission creep, said Peter Moulton. Has this article morphed into something it was never meant to be? And then the deputy, whatever her name is, I will stress, Your Honor, this does not have to harm the public and the markets. This does not have to harm the public and the markets, but everybody knows it.
That's been their defense all along. Trust us, this was only for Trump. That doesn't work legally, nor does it work politically. And so that's the problem. That's why they have almost no choice but to reverse and invalidate it. The only question is whether they wait, unless they want to risk New York's economic future, based on an insane interpretation of an insane law to begin with. I assume they don't. I assume that, New York, if they're anything, they're political hacks, but they're super sensitive to the impacts on the financial markets, because the financial markets for the entire world split their time between New York and London. So the New York relies, it's high-end real estate is mostly foreign investment. New York could be seen as a political jurisdiction that could subject anybody they want, anytime they want, to being basically bankrupted and imprisoned, like they're trying to do with Trump, based on novel interpretation of cases that no one's ever heard of being applied in this manner before. You can't have a victim when the so-called victim says they weren't a victim. You just don't have it.
Well, they did.
And
They
it was
did it.
always a ridiculous, action.
They did it with Tate. They said those victims who we say were human trafficking victims, when they say they're not, it's because they are. In this case, they're saying, look, the victim here is the people of New York, not the banks who made their money.
Who profited in tax payments, profited in successful real estate developments, profited by investments, profited with jobs.
You think that there is a better chance than not? I haven't seen a market for this yet, but there's a better chance than not that they withhold rendering a judgment until after the election.
They're partisan enough to do that.
Yeah, but also it's October, November. I once was sitting on a judge for 6 months to get a ruling on a motion to disqualify for conflict of interest of the attorney. This is they wouldn't even have time to draft this if they started yesterday. So they got
I think you'll see after the election a massive walk back of the lawfare. Is my informed speculation.
The flip side to that is they might, depending on the outcome of the election, if Kamala gets elected.
You have a president, you're going to try to lock him up. You're going to try to bankrupt him then. You're going to create a massive constitutional crisis. This was always theater. This was theater to influence the election. I think even if he lost, they were going to dump the cases later. And then say, actually this went a little too far. We want to restrict this. But they needed the theater in the interim.
So these comments were made on the 2nd of October. So Trump won on the 5th of November. And it seems like the lawfare is coming to an end, because that's exactly what it was. It was theatre. So one of the parts of the theatre was to get Stormy Daniels to testify about the exact lurid details of what happened with Trump, and that was supposed to affect the electorate, but they don't seem to have taken notice of that. It's become just obvious what's been happening with the lawfare. Great victory for common sense and people seeing through manipulation and that sort of thing. So just finish with some clips what's happened since the election. Okay, thank you.
The Fox News decision desk can now officially project that Donald Trump will become the 47th president of the United States.
The former president's comeback will be complete with a win in Wisconsin, a state that he narrowly lost 4 years ago. He is now the second president in U.S. history to win non-consecutive terms.
So finally, after 3 full days, Decision Desk HQ has called the remaining states. Look at this, 312 electoral votes for Donald Trump to Harris's 226. And look at the popular vote now. Look at the split since yesterday. Trump won by more than 5 million votes. What this means is Donald Trump is the most popular president and politician we've seen in modern political history, at least since Reagan. And if we zoom in on the blue bastion of California, something you're not hearing much about is the epic spanking that California Governor Gavin Newsom received on Tuesday night. So, look, I'll be honest right off the bat, I have a soft spot for California. I have a bias. I've spent a lot of time in California. It's jaw-droppingly beautiful, but even with all of that beauty and all the benefits that go along with it, I still won't live there full time. I won't buy property there. I've wanted to, but I've resisted. California is the definition of big government run amok. It's awful. You know this. It's why people are fleeing the state, been fleeing the state. The government sticking their nose into everything you do, treating you like a child, like they own you. You can't even buy flavored vapes there anymore or flavored Zins. Want coffee flavored Zins? Sorry. Drive 2 hours to the reservation. You want to buy these? You can't. After years of this nonsense, the people of California appear to have had enough. Watch this.
Hear about this? Los Angeles has voted to oust far-left DA George Gascon, electing Nathan Hochman with 61% of the vote.
California also passed Prop 36, making shoplifting and theft a felony for repeat offenders and increasing penalties on drug charges.
You know how you've been able to just steal whatever you want under $1,000 and get away with it? Well, that is over, folks. 70% of Californians voted yes to end that nonsense. And think about that. Prop 36 was one of those policies that Kamala Harris refused to talk about on the campaign trail, scared to take a position on it either way. Meanwhile, 70% of Californians supported it. A common sense policy. Who wouldn't? In another story, the Biden DOJ announced they are dropping all Trump's criminal charges, saying his cases are going away. They've begun to unwind them, telling NBC News yesterday they have begun the process of unwinding the 2 federal criminal cases against President-elect Trump before he takes office to comply with the long-standing department policy that a sitting president can't be prosecuted. And good riddance. But if you think this ends all the witch hunts and illegal lawfare that we've witnessed, think again. Wouldn't it be nice, though, if it did?